Hi, I'm Rebecca Page and welcome to the Portia Party Dress Sew Along. First off, I want to tell you a little bit about the pattern and also talk to you about fabrics, and then we're going to jump straight on in with today's task, which is cutting and choosing your fabric, or the other way around, choosing your fabric and then cutting. So a little bit about the pattern first. There are two different versions of the Portia. There is a free version of the Portia where you can download on the website, rebecca-page.com, and that is a stretch fabric only option, and it's knee length only. In the full version of the pattern you can use woven fabric or stretch fabric, so you've got quite a lot of option there. And then to make it even more options, you can also line it if you want to. And then in the full version of the pattern you get 4 different lengths: the above knee, the midi, which is 3/4 length, and the maxi. So free version, knit fabric only and knee length, and full version is all the different lengths and pretty much any fabric you want. So those are your options. Pick which pattern you're going to use first, and then you need to pick your fabric. So one of the other things, one of the options that is in both versions of the pattern is the back, and I want to talk about that next because that might affect your fabric choice. So this is I'm wearing a Portia, the mannequin is wearing a Portia. This is the full open back. So this is, again, in both versions, the free and the full version of the pattern, where it's completely open, so there's literally nothing underneath here. So if you are a lady, your bra strap would be exposed, so you'd either want to wear a nice bra or cami underneath, or just have it exposed and not wear anything. For children and the dolls, again, it's going to expose the full back. So I love the look, but if it doesn't suit you, it's not how you want to dress, then the other option is the partially closed back, which comes to about here, and this seam down the back here, it will be stitched up, and then it will be open from about here-ish upwards. And then for a lady, that covers your bra strap. For a child, it just gives you a bit more modesty. So it's up to you which version you would like. Yeah, so that's it for the back. What else? Yes, as we go, I'll talk a little bit about any hack ideas that I've got, ways that you can make it your own, because that's a great thing about a pattern, is once it's out there, you can then mix it up, make it however you want to make it. I'll also talk as we go along about fitting, because there's quite a few different places in the pattern where you can fit it to your body. There are numerous different body types, and only you know yours the best. So I've drafted it so that it will fit the majority of body types, but everybody's unique, and depending on a child, how fast they're growing, where they are in their growth spurts, will depend on where they are within their size range. For a lady, where you carry your weight, if you're straight, if you're curvy, if you're pear-shaped, if you're hourglass, all of those things will affect how the fit is on you. And even things like if you carry your weight out the front versus out on your hips, so all of those things can affect it. So I will talk as we go on how to fit for you the best and to get the best possible result. So the next thing to talk about is fabric. There is knit fabric, woven fabric, and lining options. So if you're doing the free version, you've just got the stretch fabric option, so you want to pick something that has at least 40% stretch. Now have a read through the bit in the pattern about which fabric to pick, because there's a lot of information in there. My one little tip I wanted to give you now though is, if you are larger busted like me, I'm a J cup, and this is a Portia, and I've made it with no modifications at all. I am 5'3", so I'm a little bit shorter, which means the bodice is a bit longer than it's intended on me, but because I'm fuller busted, I fill it up. So if you are larger busted like me, and you are short, the pattern should fit absolutely fine with no modifications. If you are larger busted and you are 6'5", 6'6" or above, you might want to add a little bit of length to the bodice. If you are smaller busted, then it will be fine. The knit version will fit well. And if you are unsure, if you're super small chested, then you might want to check and do a muslin and make sure that it's going to fit well. the other thing about, and the reason why I bring it up now about if you are larger busted, is you might want to pick the knit version with a 50% stretch or more. So this fabric that I've got on now is, it's one of my own designs, and it's an ITY jersey. So it's a really stretchy, slightly see-through jersey, and then underneath I've got another very lightweight jersey as well. It's the lining that I've got. And they both have more than 50% stretch, and that's how I'm able to get coverage in this top without needing to adjust the pattern. So 40% stretch if you're average or smaller busted, or if you're a child size or a doll size. If you're a larger busted lady, I'd recommend 50% stretch or more. For woven fabrics, what you're looking for is some kind of drape. So this is actually a stretch fabric. Again, this is one of mine, and this is a really, so it's not quite a brushed jersey, but it's really soft. It's lovely. But the point is about the drape. So this here, when it sits, it kind of drapes down nicely like that. That's what you're looking for in a woven fabric. So any kind of georgette, chiffon, rayon, anything like that. There's a whole heap of suggestions again in the patterns, so have a look there. But you are looking for it to hang nicely when you're holding it up and having a look at it. I will be running the sew along. When I sew, I'll be sewing a variety of different fabrics over the sew along to show you the different options as we go. When I do the one that I'm using a woven fabric for, I'm actually going to use a quilting cotton. I would not recommend you use that for a final dress unless you're doing it for a child, or you're quite happy to have a quite boxy shape, because it just won't sit as well. It'll sit out like this versus draping down nicely, and the shoulders will look huge. If that's the look you want, great. If not, go for something with more drape. I'm just going to use cotton because it's really easy to manipulate, and I can show you how to do the different parts of the binding and stuff very clearly without my fabric fraying as I'm fiddling it for the camera. So that's why I'm going to use cotton. It's up to you what you use. And then if you're going to use lining, again, have a look in the pattern. The lining option is only available in the full version of the pattern, and you want to use something again that has similar drape kind of properties to your main outer fabric. But as soon as you get into the lining, there's all kinds of things you could be doing, like I'm going to be using a lining to show you where the underneath part is a jersey and the upper part is a stretch lace. So there's just so many options you could do, pardon me, if you're going to start doing lining. So, and then the very last thing to mention, which is in the pattern about a zip. If you're going to do the woven version, you will need a zip. The child sizes are pretty accurate and standard. The lady size, you will see it is a very long zip that you need, 22 inches I think from memory. That is because some of our testers found that they needed to open the dress up more depending on their body shapes and their size to get into it, whereas others didn't find they needed such a long zip. So if you cannot get a 22-inch zip, or you would prefer to use a smaller zip, definitely try it. But before you stitch all your seams down and finish it all up beautifully, I'd recommend you try it on and just check that your zip is long enough. If it's not, you'd need to take it out and put in the longer 22-inch zip like we recommend, but you can get away with a shorter zip if you know your body type and you know you're likely to be able to get it on and off. On the whole, the larger sizes found it much easier. So the women's size medium upwards to 5XL generally found it easier to have a smaller zip. I think about 18-19 inches was what a lot of them used, but the smaller sizes, the kids sizes and the ladies XXS, XS and S, they all found it that they needed to have the longer zips. So that's the zip. And then next up I'm going to show you some pattern pieces, and I'm going to show you where to adjust for height, and then we're going to get cutting. So I'll see you in a moment. So these are the fabrics that I'm going to be using over the course of the sew along. There's quite a few of them, so I'll just tell you what they are first. This one here is a knit fabric. It's a one from Girl Charlie. It's one of their prints, which I got it. I'm in the UK, so I got it from girlcharlie.co.uk. I believe you can also get it from their .com website. These ones here are also stretch fabrics, and this is what I'm going to be using to show you the lined version. This pink is a lovely dusky pink, and that is from Mibs Fabric, MIBS, which again is a UK supplier. And then this is a stretch lace, which is lovely. This is the one my daughter requested, as you might guess. She also requested the gold dots. This is from Tia Knight, and it's quite stretchy, which is again, I believe, a UK company. This one here is a poly cotton. It's very cheap, but it's great for showing you. It's not one that I'd recommend for the actual finished garment, but it is one where I can really easily and clearly, you know, fold lines and show you exactly where everything is, and it's got a good right and wrong side. This I got from a local shop called Suman's Fabric, which is near where I live. And then this one here is again another woven, where I'm going to be showing you some of the woven techniques, and it's a Michael Miller border print, which is why I picked this one, so that I can show you, if you're going to be using a border print, how to deal with that. So first things first is to pick your fabric, and then I'm going to show you some pattern pieces, and we're going to get cutting out. So I'd like to show you how our pattern pieces work. They might differ from some of the other companies that you've purchased from before. This is a PDF pattern. If you know how to assemble it and you've used our patterns before, great, fast forward me for a few minutes. If you haven't, you will see that there is a line, some lines around the edge of every single page. It is inside these lines that's your pattern piece. The pieces on the outside are the ones that repeat and that you fold, that you overlap them when you stick it together. So this is a no trim pattern, which means you do not need to trim these sections away. You can leave them on there, but how it differs from many other patterns is that many other patterns, when they say they're no trim, they go all the way to the edge of their page. And as you can see here, I have not recently aligned my print cartridges, so I've ended up with this little white line where it's cut off the edge of the pattern piece here, and it's shifted the whole thing over slightly. And that means that if you've got a printer like mine that hasn't been aligned in a while, it doesn't matter, because the bits outside the square are the ones that you don't need. And then in the corners we've got these circles, and that is where you overlap them. And then in the bottom left of every page will be a code E6, which means it's column number 6 and row number 5, and there's a little chart in the pattern how to put that together if you're not sure. This is what it will look like once you get it together. So as you can see, I put 3 pieces together here. I haven't done the whole thing, it wouldn't fit on camera, but as you can see in the center where the pages overlap is the circle coming together. So each of these quarter circles will make into a whole circle. And you can see that I've overlapped the edges, so I've put this the box here so that it matches bang up with the box on this one. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, please post it on the Sew Along or in the group, and we can help you get the pattern together. So that is the how we do the pattern, and then I want to show you the difference between the full version and the free version pattern pieces. So if you're doing the free version, you will, when you download your pattern pieces, you will find there is only the knit version, and it'll say free knit version on every one of the pattern pieces, and you will only have one centre back fold line. I'll explain why there is 2 in the other pattern in a moment, but so when you get your skirt, this is what it will look like. You'll have your dart up the top, you'll have a fold line here, and you'll have your length, and you will just cut to your size. And I've cut this one size 3 to 4, which is my daughter's size. I'm going to do all of my dresses in size 3 to 4 because it's consistent, so that you can see it along the Sew Along what the different pieces look like, and also I can easily fit them on camera, whereas a lady size it's much more difficult because they're bigger. So you can print in layers or not in layers, and I'll show you an example of that in a moment. What I want to compare first though is the free versus the full pattern piece. Let me just check if you can see that okay. There we go, that's better. The free pattern piece, you'll notice, will only have a knee length cutting line. The full pattern piece, you'll see lots of different cutting lines for above knee, midi length, which is 3/4, and maxi, and it'll say on it so that you know where to cut. The other difference between the free and the full version is the fold lines. So the free version, you're going to be using knit fabric, so you're going to line up your fold when you fold your fabric. You're going to line this piece up here on the fold, so that once you've cut around here, then you're going to open it up and you've got your whole skirt piece. This one here is the full version, and by contrast you'll see there are two different fold lines. There is a woven fold line that runs all the way down the outside of the pattern piece, and then there is a knit fold line that runs down the inside. So if you're doing the woven version on the skirt, you're going to follow this outside line and just ignore this inside line. If you're doing the full version and you're using knit fabric, you would just chop this bit off, so the pattern would look like this. So you would only have, again, your one knit fold line. There is a diagram about this in the pattern if you are confused, so that you can see what it looks like. Then the next thing I want to show you is, this is where I want to show you this, where I have printed with layers and without. And as you can see, this one here, I have not used the layer feature, which is something, again, it's in the pattern to show you how to use it. So you'll see there are lots of lines and it's very confusing. And if I come up here, you can see there are lots of different darts marked, and on the back piece there is lots of different notches marked. So you have to kind of have your wits about you when you're cutting out to make sure you're cutting on the right lines. By contrast, if you see the this one here where I printed using just the size 3 to 4, only the 3 to 4 is marked. So the first adjustment I want to talk about to your pattern pieces that you might want to make before you cut out is the length. And as you can see here, or hopefully you can see it on camera, I've marked Isabel tunic, which is my daughter's name is Isabel, and I wanted to make her a tunic length one. So what I did was I held up, this is the front pattern piece, and I was cutting the woven piece. You don't need this little bit here for knit, you would just cut that off. I've left it there so you can see the difference between the pattern pieces, but if you're doing woven, you just cut along there. So I'm doing the woven pattern piece for this one, and I held this centre point up to the centre of her breastbone. So right in the middle of her chest is slightly kind of half an inch below is where this will hit. And so I held that up there, and then I measured down roughly where I wanted it to fall, and then added an inch so that I've got 1 inch worth of hem. And then I measured, and I made a little mark here, and then I got my ruler and I measured how far it was to the closest hemline. So there is an above knee length hemline here, and I measured that, and it was exactly 6 centimetres above it. So then I just went along like this, and I marked boom, 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 boom. So then I've got a gentle curve that I can draw along here to then get my tunic length. And then I took the same 6 centimetres I mean, and I marked up from on the back pattern piece as well, so that there was an equally matching tunic hemline, if that makes sense. And you can do that anywhere. If you wanted slightly below knee, nearly maxi, not quite, you can measure that in any way you like. So those are the skirt pattern pieces. What I want to talk about then is the difference between the front pattern pieces. So there is, whoops, that's not, just a moment. There we go. That's better. Right, so now I want to talk about the difference between the pattern pieces if you're using the full version for the top. You will see here that there is a top back woven and a top back knit pattern piece. You only need one or the other. If you're doing woven fabric, whether it's lined or not, you'll need the woven piece. If you're doing knit, you'll need the knit piece. As you can see, they are not the same size or shape. They kind of look like it, but they're not. So make sure you've got the right pattern piece, because it will affect the fit. And if you use the knit fabric pattern piece with woven, it probably won't fit. So make sure to use the right one. And on that note, before you cut out, please, 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 please measure. Our sizing might not match the sizing that you are used to from other designers. It might not match the sizing you're used to from, I don't know, ready-to-wear clothes, or any of the paper patterns out there. We tested this pattern with over 140 different ladies of all different shapes and sizes and children, so please do measure and check and use the size that you fall into. You will also find in the pattern You will also find in the pattern finished garment measurements. Check them, use them to make sure that you're getting the fit that you want so that you can see it. The top is, as you can see, includes the sleeve and it is very big, so you want to make sure that you go by the waist measurement as per the fitting advice in the pattern. The hip is quite full, the top is quite full. It's the waist measurement that's going to be the most important one for most people, but check your size, check your finished garment measurements and make sure. So in terms of making adjustments to the pattern pieces, I'm going to talk about the let's grab the right pattern piece. So in terms of adjusting for height, you want to do this to your pattern pieces before you start cutting. If you are doing a child size and you've got, for example, the waist of a 3 to 4 year old but the height of a 5 to 6 year old, what I would recommend you do is you print the pattern with those 2 layers turned on and the rest of them turned off. And then you can what's called blend between sizes, where you use the width of the 3 to 4 but the height of the 5 to 6. If you've not done that before and you need to do that, what I would recommend doing is post on the Rebecca Page group, Facebook group, not just the sew along but in the actual group, so that as many people can see it and can help you. There's lots of ladies who've done adjustments on the group and can help. For ladies, it's a little bit more complicated. The ladies pattern piece has a lengthen shorten line that runs roughly through about here on the pattern pieces. I'm going to show you on the front exactly what we do, and it's different depending on if you are taller or shorter. If you are taller, what you need to do is add the length on the hem of the skirt first. So whatever cutting line you're going to be using, the knee length, above knee, midi, maxi, whatever, add, let's say you are 5'8". Personally, I like to add a little bit more than is necessary because it's going to depend on where your height is. For example, you might be longer in the body versus longer in the legs. So you're going to add a total of 2 inches. I would add 1.5 perhaps to the hem, or 2 inches to the hem, to make sure that you've really got exactly what you want. And then with this length and shorten line that runs through here, this is not it, this is just one of the grid lines from putting the pattern together, but there is a line that runs through here that says length and shorten for the ladies. Cut along that and then move your 2 pattern pieces so that they are 1/2 inch apart from each other, and then pop another bit of paper underneath and tape it together, and then you've got you should have your front piece, which is lengthened by 1/2 inch. If you are shorter, there are 2 different places that you're going to adjust. Again, at the hem. Now I would, unless you're significantly shorter, I would cut the hem exactly as is and adjust that once you've got the dress on, because again it's going to depend on where your height is or isn't. If you don't want to waste fabric, then you could just take it straight off the hem before you cut, or if you know you're definitely much shorter than 5'6". The other place is in this bust piece, because this is going to be too long. If you are smaller busted, what I would recommend you do is you could either take a very small sliver out of the pattern where the length and shorten line is. So fold the pattern piece up by 1/4 inch along the length and shorten line like that. Or you could cut it as is and take it up at the shoulder. Taking it up at the shoulder is going to keep this V above your bust, so that it's going to be give you more coverage. If you want one that's quite low cut, then leave the shoulder seam where it is and do it at the technically correct place, which is in the length and shorten line. It really depends on the fit and the look that you want to get. If you are larger busted, so I would say from a D cup upwards, I would leave the pattern piece exactly as is. Do not take any length out of here, because that will essentially, this extra length that you don't need in this pattern piece because you're shorter, will essentially become a full bust adjustment. It's not the technically correct way of doing a full bust adjustment, and if you are really much larger, like I'm a J cup, and if I was going to do a woven version of this dress, I would do a proper full bust adjustment, but this is kind of the quick and dirty way of doing one if you're using a knit fabric and you're larger busted, or if you're larger busted but not super larger like me, then leave the length in there because it gives you that coverage. If you are pregnant, there is, we've had testers, I think we had 4 testers who were pregnant try this, and they used a variety of knit and woven fabric, and again, it's going to depend on where you carry your baby and your shape, as to whether you need to make any adjustments or not. But of our 4 testers, nobody made any adjustments, and all of them had dresses that fitted comfortably. So do a muslin if you're unsure, if you know that you carry your baby really far out or really wide, or you're above about 33 weeks and you're doing the woven version. The knit version will just stretch, but the woven version, if you're above, say, 33 weeks pregnant, that was the biggest we tried the woven on, then I would do a muslin and check. But otherwise you should be fine. Breastfeeding, we had 4, I think 3, 4, oh, someone's going to correct me, I'm sure, in the comments, ladies who were breastfeeding who tried it in our group. And there is they tried 2 different options on how to feed comfortably in the dress. Both worked, and they each had their personal preferences, which ones they liked more. There is a stitch line, there is an option to put a stitch line up here, which gives you a more rounded bust. This is a really drapey sleeve, and the style of the sleeve means that the top will kind of fold around the bust like that when you're wearing a really drapey fabric. It can be super pretty, but also it's a look that some people love and some people don't. So an option we put in was to do a stitch line up here, which keeps the dress rounding over the bust, and then the whole drape thing going only down the shoulder versus kind of draping onto the bust as well. So if you are breastfeeding, one of the options that people did was to not do the stitch line. That leaves this shoulder really open here, so it is literally open all the way into your bust. And for those using a stretch fabric, they fed by literally just pulling over like that. You need to make sure you've got good stretch recovery. I would recommend, really, if you're going to be breastfeeding, to only do the knit version, not do the woven version, unless you've really muslined it and checked it for your size and shape. The other option that our breastfeeding ladies did was they did not, they unclipped the button at the centre back, and then they pulled the top down. Again, I would check that your fabric has good stretch recovery, which basically means stretch it and check whether or not the fabric is wobbly and whether it's gone in nicely again and it's looks okay. Because if you're going to be doing that lots of time, or this lots of time, you want to make sure that the garment doesn't then stretch and look all yucky. So those are your couple of options for breastfeeding. Personally, what I would do is not do the stitch line. It's right at the very end. Try it on, see how you like it, and then see which method you prefer. A couple of them wore nothing underneath because it was really drapey, and they just wanted their bra and that was it. The other 2 said, no, I prefer to wear a little vest underneath and a little camisole and have some coverage. So again, up to you. So there's so many different options on how you can cut out, or what you're going to be cutting out, woven, knit, all of those different things. I'm not going to go through all of the different options now and cut to show you. I'm going to leave you to cut, and if you get stuck, just post on the group. There are instructions on each of the pattern pieces. It says here, fabric cut 1 on fold. This is the top front in a woven. Optional lining, cut 1 on fold. So if you're doing the lining, you're going to be looking at this bottom line. If you're not doing the lining, ignore that, and you will have essentially your top front, top back, and then here I've got, I've cut out a now I've traced these pattern pieces off because I've done the tunic length and I wanted it to be nice and easy to use. I've done a skirt front and skirt back, so you will only have 4 pattern pieces that you need to cut out. Top front is on the fold, the skirt front is on the fold, the skirt back is on the fold. The only one that is not on the fold is your woven back, sorry, not your woven, your top back piece. Because it's not on the fold, you need to have it in 2 opposite pieces so that they're essentially a mirror image. So you've got your right side, and then your wrong side's in the middle. And when I say on the fold, in case you're new to sewing and you're not sure what that means is I folded my fabric in half, then I placed my pattern piece on with this arrow here which indicates on the fold right up against the edge, and then I only cut around this bit. I did not cut down there, so that when I open it up it's a whole skirt piece. So that's what you're looking to do. If your fabric is not wide enough and you want to cut your skirt or even the centre of your top not on the fold, what you will need to do is add half an inch out this side of the pattern piece, and then you're going to just cut all the way around it, and then before you start, stitch that bit together so that you still end up with it as if it was on the fold, but it's going to have a stitch line there. That's perfectly fine to do. It's completely up to you if you want to do that. So the only other thing to show you is if you're going to cut your skirt out of a border print, which means that the bottom of the fabric is different to the top of the fabric. Usually border prints run a long way across the grain, is that the right terminology? Down the fabric like this. So you normally your pattern pieces run down the fabric like this, so you'll be turning them that way in order to have the border print at the bottom and not at the top of the fabric. That's okay to do for some fabric types, not for others. My general thing is I would comfortably do that for a knit fabric with 4-way stretch, but not with 2-way. Otherwise, when you hang your skirt, it's going to start stretching in funny directions. And with wovens, I generally do a bit of a hold it up test. There are technical ways of checking that, but I won't go into those. I would generally hold it up and make sure, does it sit nicely if I hold it this way versus holding it that way, and make sure that it sits nicely. But if you're going to do a border print, the thing before you cut out to check is that when you place your pattern pieces on your fabric, make sure, and obviously you put them each on the fold, but make sure that you align this bottom of the hem of your skirt at the same place vertically up and down your border print. Do not align the tops, because if you align this pointy bit here from the skirt front with the flat bit of the back, when you get to the bottom of the skirt, hey ho, your border's not going to match. So when you stitch your side seams, which go like that, you want the border to be the same down here. So align them both at the bottom. Right, really one last thing to talk about cutting out is if you're doing the woven unlined option, you will need bias tape, which needs to be 1/2 inch wide single fold bias tape. So this, or 1/4 inch wide double fold, it's the same thing. Just one's got a fold down the middle. So I have measured out a strip of paper here so that it is 1 inch wide. If you've got store-bought tape, you will not need to do this. And if you want some more detailed steps on how to do this, there's a free bias tape tutorial in the freebie pattern section of our website on www.rebecca-page.com. So this here is 1 inch wide. If I fold it, then it becomes 1/4 inch wide, and when I fold the outsides into the inside and then over again, it becomes 1/4 inch wide, which is what we want to cover up our seam allowances for the woven unlined option. If you're doing the knit or any kind of lined option, or you're doing the woven and you're going to use a serger, you won't need this, but woven unlined you will. And then how I'm going to do this is exactly like I do in the tutorial on our website. So I'm going to fold my pattern piece so that I've got, not my pattern piece, I've got my my fabric in a square, and I've the grain line is running, show you, the grain line is running along this way, so it's this way across, and I'm going to fold it so that it's on a diagonal, which is the bias in fabric. And I'm gonna it's easier if you press that down, but I'm just going to show you on camera here, and then I'm going to cut down this fold line. This is not the most accurate way of doing it. I'm trying to do it at speed on camera for you, so that we're not taking too long with this. If you're doing it at home, I would do it a bit slower than this, and you can either just cut like this and move your ruler along, or you can mark it and then cut along your marking. I'm going to just do this because I don't want to take too long with this particular section, because not everybody needs to do this. So I'm cutting through both layers of fabric along the bias, which is the diagonal, to make a 1 inch wide strip. And then once I've cut this, I'm going to fold it wrong sides together so that it has a fold. There we go, get rid of that. Now I've got my 2 strips. Now the reason this is called on the bias is because even though it's woven, it stretches slightly because it's cut on the diagonal. So there we go, I'm going to turn it wrong side up, and what I'm going to do with my iron in just a moment is I'm going to press it wrong sides together like that. Then I will open it out and I'll use the pressed line in the middle to fold each side in, come on, into the middle like that. That's called single fold bias tape, and that will now be 1/2 inch wide. And then I'll fold it again so that it's gone like, oh, how do I show you? It's gone like that into the middle, and then I'm going to fold it again so that it's like that, and then into the middle like that, so that the raw edges are tucked right in the middle and it's 1/4 inch wide, and then we will use that to finish off our seams on the inside. So you only need that if you're doing the woven fabric, the unlined option, and then that really is it. So go ahead and cut your 2 top back pieces, which are mirror image, your on the fold front piece, your on the fold back skirt, and your on the fold front skirt. So you'll have 4 pieces cut out, and then if you're doing woven unlined, you'll need bias tape as well. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for listening to all of this. Hopefully you've learned a few things and got a real hang of how and where you're going to adjust. I will try and give more tips on adjusting the pattern as we go. The next thing up is going to be darts tomorrow. See you then. Thank you.